Welcome, listeners, to www.IronRadio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. This is Phil Stevens. You're on Iron Radio. I'm a powerlifter, strength coach, football coach, now wrestling coach, a little bit of everything. So,
right on. And I am Lonnie Lowry. I am a university professor about 25 years, former competitive bodybuilder, consultant for the food and academic industries. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on today, everybody, it's just Phil and myself. A new study, it kind of sparked a discussion. And that is, the study, let me back up, is about fiber and about how we might have expectations that are too high. Now, I talk about gut bacteria and fermentable fiber all the time, stuff like inulin and short-chain oligosaccharides, and, all that kind of stuff, fructooligosaccharides. Anyway, the title, let's start with the title. It says, tuning expectations to reality, don't expect increased gut microbiota diversity with dietary fiber. Now, let me give you a little bit of background for this, and you can see where it almost seems a little disappointing, sort of. This is by Cantu Jungles and Haymaker. It just came out November 2023. It says dietary approaches, particularly those including fiber supplementation, can be used to promote benefits by shaping gut microbiota, etc. We summarize how factors including the methodology, right? What kind of experimentation the researchers are doing. Because, Phil, you know what this is like. They're literally collecting poop samples. Mm-hmm. You've been a subject in this stuff before. The number of bacteria that have to share a fiber, if you're feeding a certain fiber to get some growth, well, there's competition. All those bacteria in your colon are, fighting for it. And then initial relative abundance of bacteria. So actually what you have going on at baseline, how that can significantly affect outcomes. So let me just read a few things from the intro and the conclusion. I don't want to bore everybody. Alpha diversity is a measure of within sample diversity. Several alpha diversity metrics exist to capture unique aspects, right, of, again, gut bacteria, including richness and evenness and things of that nature. It says the association of alpha diversity with disease states and lifestyles is often reported. I mean, I do that here sometimes. Several population studies found associations of reduced alpha diversity with things like obesity. We've heard about that before, like you don't have a very diverse bacteria in your gut. That's been associated, at least, with obesity. Also associated with anxiety, stress, allergies, and IBS, inflammatory bowel syndrome, among others. It says, consistent with these observations, reduced alpha diversity was found in individuals from industrialized populations compared with unindustrialized populations. And again, it kind of hints at what are we doing wrong in this fake environment that we're in. It says factors proposed to contribute to reduced diversity of bacteria in the gut are lifestyle, antibiotic use, disruption of the biological clock, and dietary patterns. It says, interestingly, however, is that the attempt to promote alpha diversity through dietary interventions, including fermentable dietary fibers. And again, the poster child for this in my mind is inulin, like from chicory root. Mm-hmm. Those studies are contradictory. It says some intervention studies show potential to increase this alpha diversity, but a lot of the studies show no effect. So they just go on to conclude, it says diversity embodies one of the major focus areas in microbial ecology. It is intuitively simple, but when put into the context of fiber supplements, it's not well understood. So they're kind of saying, pump the brakes, let's take a step back. You don't just rewrite your gut bacteria when you eat fiber. And I think we've said that over the years, but this is, again, kind of a sobering wake-up call. It says here we explained that the use of current alpha diversity metrics, again, by the methods of the scientists, is of limited value in assessing positive or negative outcomes of fiber supplement studies and their relationship to health. So upon reading this, and I don't want to confuse listeners, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, science says one thing and then it says another. You guys don't know what the hell's going on. Well, no, it's an inch-wise, step-wise kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And here we're just saying, sober up. It's not, I can just eat some chicory root or some, there's all kinds of fermentable fibers on the market now. Some are fast-acting, some are slow. you're not going to rewrite what's in your gut and get lean just because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of brought me to the idea that you and I could discuss in the first half, which is the reality anything that's shy of high dose drug use, performance enhancing meds. I know you had a question recently more about GLP-1 agonists. We keep getting those. Drugs are powerful, right? We know this. I mean, God knows powerlifters and bodybuilders know drugs are powerful.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't respect them enough, even as far as what they do with them. But is this stuff underwhelming? Like, it's hard to whip up excitement about, oh, you should eat these dietary fibers or you should take these supplements or do X, Y, and Z when, the scientists are excited by small differences and they're kind of refining the methodology they use. But, you're not going to cure cancer. You're not going to get rid of obesity. Is that boring?
I think to today's society it is. And I think that's an issue we can delve into more later in the episode. But today's world is generally impatient, and they want everything, a quick fix for everything now, down to every aspect of life. Like, nobody wants to change anything drastic, and they want the result now. Nobody wants to change a diet. They want to take a pill and fix it.
Yeah.
So yes, little changes like adding fiber to your diet is the 2%. But if you make 17 changes and act like an adult, now you've changed, what is it? 34%.
Yeah.
So that's a big change. So any one little thing is small. And it's the same thing we've talked about in the supplement industry. Now, are there supplements that work? Yes. Does creatine work? Yes. Is it a magic pill? Is it like taking Dianabol? No. But,
right.
And that's where people get it wrong. They start taking creatine and they're underwhelmed because they don't realize that it's a very small single percentage change.
And, Phil, if they're underwhelmed by creatine, that's one of the best things we have to offer.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like one of the best legal, and that's the problem. I think everybody wants it. They're like the girl off Willy Wonka. That I want it and I want it now.
Yeah.
And that's just today's society. They want everything in a few seconds, and they're not willing to take the long game. And that comes down to everything, training and all. Like we've talked about it for years on here. How many people I've turned away because I'm honest with them and I give them the 10-year plan, and they want it in 7 weeks. Yeah. I remember the one girl we talked about years ago that came in and she called me up and said she wanted to compete in figure, and then she showed up and it was like, you've never seen a gym, and she wanted to do a meet in like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
No, you're 5 years out.
Right.
And
years.
Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh. And that, I think part of that is today's society, so they are underwhelmed by that. And then people that have been in the game longer and things like that, they can see that, that if I take that 1% change and 40 other 1% changes, I'm getting somewhere.
If they're minor things, but you do lots of them, so long as they don't cancel each other out in some way, which typically I would think they wouldn't, But time frames, I used to tell students, time frames you can give clients is one of the most valuable pieces of equipment you can give them, or, of knowledge that you can give them, which is do the math behind fat loss. Mm-hmm. You're talking about many, many weeks, right, to months, to half a year before you can make changes enough that you can see and other people can see. So the time frames for muscle gain or fat loss, they can be demoralizing for someone who comes to you like that. Like, hey, 7 weeks, I want to be ready. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I never really gave it as much thought. But that also applies to a lot of these nutrition interventions. You can't just take some protein, start your whey protein, and expect to look bigger next week. That's folly. That's not going to work.
But I mean, let's be honest. That is why, like the GLP agonists we were just talking about, why do you think they're popular? They're popular because they work now.
Yeah.
With very little work. And that's what everybody wants. They don't want to say, I need to go on a diet long term and lose weight. And then once you've lost the weight, now you have to maintain it. You need to make a lifestyle change. And that's too much fucking work for people now.
Yeah, when you come off these meds, there's going to be some rebound if you're not changing anything,
Yeah, we've seen it with gastric bypass. How many people that did that? Of course, they lost weight, but then a year and a half later, they stretched it back out and they're 400 pounds again. You have to change yourself long term.
Case in point, I was talking to a colleague of mine, a professor, and one of her family friends, he has diabetes or pre-diabetes, and he's like, I'm going to have another couple of beers and several more pieces of pizza, and I want that ice cream too. And they're like, whoa, I don't know if you should do that. And he goes, no problem. And he busted out a metformin and popped a metformin pill, and he's like, okay, I'm good to go. And that's the mentality people have, as if, I mean, that might be on some level some damage control for what he's doing, but that's not how you do it, man. Yeah. Like, you have to go for a walk every once in a while.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know how much of this is, now we're going down a rabbit hole into being old curmudgeons and conspiracy theory, but how much of this is today's society? I was talking about this with my wife the other day. We're watching something on TV, and the commercials now. When we were kids, there was never a commercial on TV for medications. And let's get down to it. 90% of medications on TV are the quick fix. That's what they're targeted to. You got this problem? Fix it. And it's not fixing it by diet and exercise and hard things. It's fixing it by taking this. And then quietly they list the 742 side effects. And it's pushed in people's faces every day, every minute. This 30-second fix to everything. There is, like, you don't see a commercial for, if you do this for 10 years, you'll be in a better place.
Absolutely
that's not marketable.
Yeah.
So everything pushed on us now is fast, and social media has made that even more so.
Right. Including, I think, bogus expectations for how quickly diet and exercise work.
Yes.
Yes. Because skepticism doesn't sell, right? Nope. Maturity doesn't sell. Like, wake-up call, half a year, and you're right. And I never thought about that, but the direct-to-consumer medications and the promises they make, and then sometimes the rapid-fire, real quietly spoken side effects at the end, you're like, whoa, those are way worse than what you're trying to treat.
Yes.
But you're right. Yeah. It creates that background expectation. Well, this is the kind of power I expect if I'm going to invest any time or money in this at all. And it's like, yeah, but the long-term, what you think you're going to get out of that long-term is not there. It's just not there. And you actually confused yourself, because now things that do matter, that take time, because you're a biological creature, for God's sake. You don't just replace something entirely. I mean, unless you joint replacement, I guess, or something. But yeah, it doesn't happen that way, and they're conditioned, because you're right, those ads are in their faces all the time.
Yeah. And then you couple that with the fact that now the people in the fitness and nutrition industry as experts grew up in that era, and they have no problem pushing that agenda. Like, I can't tell you how many people have, well, this guy told me he could have me ready in 6 weeks. Well, okay, go to that guy.
Right.
I'm not going to lie to you. I won't do it.
Right.
Plus, I mean, what I don't get about those people is like the girl that I told that would take 5 years. In my mind, it wasn't just her whose reputation I'm putting on the line. Yeah, she's the one stepping on stage is going to look like an asshole, but I'm the person behind that, and she is my walking advertisement.
Absolutely.
If I put her on stage to be laughed at, I am being laughed at.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, that looks bad on me. So
it's like a bad science paper. I've heard people say, I don't know if I put my name on that one, because it's kind of an implied endorsement. Like, that's, I did my best to make that happen, and it's bad. Yep. So and I can't put my name on that.
Yep. And nobody seems to give a shit about that anymore. So but I mean, expectations are skewed, and So
you know what? It might have been the ISSN meeting that you went to all those years ago, but I remember there was a guy from the NIH, and he specifically said, all these things I'm about to tell you in a very excited manner about all this progress, the general public will be so underwhelmed and disappointed with this, And I just thought, he's right. Like, the stuff that excites me is because, you study something long enough, or you're involved experientially long enough, you appreciate the nuances. Like, these little things were barriers before. We just overcame them, and we're inching towards something better. But everything is not the new revolution, the new rules, rewrite everything. Science usually doesn't work that way. Fitness doesn't really work that way, despite the books. And you and I, we have friends that have written books, with titles like New Revolution and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to create excitement. But, a marketer would say, but Lonnie, average people, they need that. You have to sell them on it. And it's like, well, what if the actual product is more sobering than they want? Like you said, like a 10-year plan, or like me to get ready for a diet. I need half a year. And really, you have to be pretty lean to begin with. Or you don't have any muscle mass underneath. So there's going to be nothing to show if I just diet you down. Like, why do you think? You just need some context here. You need a reality check.
And you can boil it down and look at real sports. Like, there's a reason the Olympics happens every 4 years. They need years to get ready for it.
To show improvement.
Show improvement and recovery. And, like, imagine if it was people would be beat to shit if they were doing an Olympics every year. It is what it is. Real progress takes time and it takes investment, and nobody wants to give that anymore. And I think that's also, like, coming into the world where I've lived most of the time in powerlifting. We see it's very normal now to see flash in the pan lifters. They make it to that high level, not at the elite level, but you see tons of people make it high level very quickly, and then they're gone. And they all take these quick fixes, and a big part of that's drugs. And that's not me saying that Ed Cohn didn't do drugs. He did, but at a different level, and he was also on a 15-year plan.
Absolutely, which is why he's a legend instead of flash in the pan.
Yes, and people aren't willing to do that now. There's a different, I don't know. I think, like Ed, I think loved the sport. He didn't love the fame of the sport, if that makes sense. He literally had a passion for doing it. And when you have that passion, you'll do it for years. And it's that, I don't know. I mean, I'm speaking for Ed now, but the main goal wasn't the world record when he started. The main goal was just to do better. And then do better 100 times, and those happen.
And then one day you're awesome.
Yes.
It's back to that, focus on the contest and the competition and that sort of electricity that you feel instead of just selfies with your iPhone in the gym. That somehow cheapens it. I don't know. You know what? Case in point, I was talking to my son just the other day about this, and he was talking about the perspective of a lot of these young guys with juice and lifting, and how very brief, you can't even call it a career. Just like you said, peak at a high level. It's more about the meds than it is the training or anything else. And he even used the term trend cough. And I'm like, oh my God. So like, that's in common vernacular now. That's just out there in common speech. I'm like, first of all, trenbolone is a powerful med. Back in the day, people were taking in literally 1/10 of what these guys are talking about now. The idea that you're going to start coughing because you're in such a high dose, that wasn't even on my radar. And I had spoken to a lot of guys in competitions and that kind of stuff, and I wasn't unfamiliar with that drug. But when terms like trend cough are just YouTube language now, I'm like, okay, that sums it up, And again, you're right. I don't want to go into curmudgeon mode. I guess I am a curmudgeon, but it does kind of suggest what we're talking about, right? Like, step on the gas real hard. Your expectations are through the roof because you see people on social media reinforcing those expectations. Look what I did, and and then they exaggerate like they're so special. Look what I did in this tiny fraction of time. And you're like, you're going to pay the price for that. Or like you were saying, like with Ed Cohn, you're never being Ed Cohn. And you know what? Maybe time has moved on, and there won't be other Eddie Cohns, right? Because he was a pioneer, kind of, and you can only have a group of pioneers once. So you're not going to see now someone comes along and they do amazing stuff, and I don't know, you get kind of desensitized to it. And then here's me trying to say, oh, the news is with dietary fiber and how it might help with X, Y, and Z, these minor little things. Yeah, and maybe there's a lot of people in the Gen Pop that just tune out. Like, why is that exciting to you, Lonnie?
Yeah, well, that's at the same time, though. I think I think the people that have a true passion for what we're talking about will find it interesting. They are going to be like the 2%, but that's okay. And that's no different than like with my son and my daughter. We've introduced them from birth to athletics and being active and any sport we can get them in. And like my son has liked every sport he's done, pretty much. Like,
That's good.
this is fun.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't loved it, you know? And then we tried football, and he like just has a passion for it. And it's like, and that's what people need to do. And it's okay. It's like, find that thing that you just have to do, you know? And I don't think people do that. It's like find that thing that you just get lost in. There's a reason I competed so much.
Right.
I literally loved being on the platform.
There was reward.
That was my place. And was the training fun? Yeah, it was. But like, I loved being on the platform. I would lose my, like we talked about, you just go mindless, and it's like nothing exists. It's just, for me, the only, like riding a motorcycle is like that. It clears my head.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think about anything else. I just go mindless in a meet, and it's just enjoying being present right then. I'm not worrying about, are you getting the right angle on the camera and shit like that? Or is somebody catching it on video? I don't give a shit. I'm doing it. I'm living it. You know?
It's authentic. There's authenticity in that. You're not trying to be an actor on the screen in the frame, value signaling about something. You're just getting lost in the activity.
And I wasn't crushed if I missed a lift. It was like, hey, man, I fucking tried. I went out there and I did it. You know?
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, to dispel too much of the curmudgeonism, I'm sure there are a lot of Gen Z people, millennial and Gen Z, that they have been around the game long enough, and they're moving into that, let's call it maturity, that they can appreciate nuance, right? Like, these are the sport activities I like, or the lifts that I like, or even the dietary supplements that I like.
Yeah.
I feel like I can stick with those and appreciate them for what they are, right? Yes, of course there are younger people in that mode, but yeah, they are swimming upstream more, I think, than we did, in that they are bombarded by the pharmaceutical ads and the social media, and, you know, everybody's value signaling and basically lying.
Yes.
A lot of people are, not everybody, of course, about how awesome they are and how they did it in such a short period of time. And that kind of triggers that, well, I'm special too. You know, I'm the chosen one. Sure you are.
Yeah, and I think this may be the difference. The difference is, because we were talking about Ed, let's take him as an example. In his day, I think the amount of truly elite people is the same as it ever was. And it's the same as it ever will be. There's a reason they're elite. There's a reason there's like one Michael Jordan. And there'll always be just one at a time or whatever, a very few amount of those. The difference now is, like in Ed's day, Ed didn't scream that I'm the best, right? Other people did. There was no social media. Ed wasn't posting that. Other people screamed it.
Right.
That's what made it real. Now, the people and the other people, the non-greats, didn't have a voice because no one was screaming for them. Right? So you just didn't hear about all the other. Now, all the non-greats have a really loud voice. And the greats are still shutting the fuck up and doing it.
That's right.
Yeah. Like, the greats are still just being great. And someone else has to speak for them. Whereas the flash in the pans are on every social media app there is, constantly screaming how fucking awesome they are.
Right.
So their voice is so much louder. Like, I don't think there's less elite people now. There are people right now doing amazing things in all sports, all lifting.
Yeah.
And they're still the same amount they were before. And generally, like we've talked about, they are genetic freaks that have work ethic. And when those two things meet together, you get something great. Now, I've had genetic freaks, plenty of them, walk through my gym. I've had people that amazed me. But most of the time, they don't have work ethic. It's like you need this amazing thing to come together into one individual to create somebody great.
Yeah. Magical combination.
Yeah, magical combination of the mental aspects. You need to be a genetic freak, a mental freak. All these things need to come together into one amazing athlete.
Yeah.
Or one amazing scientist, or, you know,
right.
There's plenty of brilliant people out there that just don't have the drive to sit down in a lab and study for
Right. A
20
decade.
hours a day for a decade.
It reminds me of, I think it was a Beethoven quote. It says, don't just practice your art, but delve into its secrets, uncover its secrets. And that's the kind of nuances that we're talking about. And I think as you're moving into the intermediate space with lifting or, sports nutrition, whatever you're doing, that's what you do. You appreciate these nuances. You're starting to delve into its secrets. Mm-hmm. It could be tweaking the number of sets or how you do repetitions or accessory work or the kind of dietary supplements you want to take. Is it more gut health oriented? Are you all about the protein types and the timing? And, you can delve into those secrets. Whereas the beginner, he or she isn't ready to delve into secrets. They want the secrets right now, but they want them for the wrong reason. They're not refining and going for these nuances and stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of that's earned. Like, you can't, there's only so much shit you can fast track. There are things that literally just take 10 years. Like, you're not going to get there. You're not going to gain Ed Cohn's knowledge in a weekend class. It can't happen.
In fact, my son was just saying he heard some guy on YouTube who's like saying, I'm retired now. I'm a veteran. I'm retired. The guy's like 24. Yeah. It's like, okay, son. No, you're not. Like, you were a flash in the pan. You hit something hard.
Yeah.
And you probably, like you said, you got to a pretty high level, enough to get respect and people listening to you because you look amazing or you're strong as hell or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But you're not a veteran, and you might be retired, but that's a sad commentary. You're retired at 24.
Yeah.
No, that's not old.
In any field, like coaching, in any field, like, there is just knowledge gained doing it for long term. Like, somebody that's been coaching for 10 years and read the same book as somebody that's been doing it for 1 year, like that 10-year veteran, he's just learned things in the field that can't be fast-tracked.
Yeah. It's sort of serial case studies. I mean, I've read those Dale Carnegie books, like about anxiety and what is it, like, how to influence people, books like that. They're just a series of case studies. And this guy has some amazing insights. In fact, I would recommend Dale Carnegie's books if people are interested in just sort of a mindset and that kind of stuff. But what you're saying, it's experiential. He taught like night courses at the YMCA forever on public speaking and this and that. And it's just case study after case study after case study. And you get this kind of analog granularity of stuff, that you can really appreciate, like you said. And that's what makes the veteran, because someone like you, each one of your clients is a case study that, then there's another one, and then you can compare and contrast in your mind. Why did this work for him or her and not for the former one? Yeah. And that's why I think experience is so valuable, because if you want to look at it from a science nerd perspective, it's a series of case studies, and that builds amazing competence in something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep. So.
Okay. Well, let's go to break. When we come back, for everybody, we're going to just talk about the future of IronRadio, future of the podcast.
Hey, everybody. IronRadio is back, and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network, as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new IronRadio/Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. Second, please tell your friends who are longtime loyal listeners that they may see emails that share just the episode link and the show notes. This is a new thing, and we hope it will build community. Third, if you were a supporting member in the past, we may prompt you to resume through PayPal, but we will confirm each and every donor before reinstating that membership category. We'll never just restart your $4 auto payments without agreement from you. And of course, we will accept new members moving forward as well. Starting back slowly and honorably is the goal. And lastly, expect the sister show Nutrition Radio to expand into once weekly 45 to 60 minute episodes with guest co-hosts, covering the same nerdy nutrition news that's been broadcast for a few months now in daily 10-minute clips. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Hi, everybody. We're back. And like Lonnie said, we're going to talk about just the future of the podcast and which way we're headed. And it ties right into what we've been talking about. And like, we've been doing this for 15 years now?
Yep.
And so you're talking 2008. So, and in that time, of course, we've aged 15 years. And what I'm doing is totally different now. Like, when we started this thing, I was competing 6 or plus times a year in multiple sports. Hell, more than that. Probably 6 powerlifting meets a year. Yep. And then Highland Games and Strongman and things like that. And now we're at a different time in life. We both have grown kids. I've got grandkids. We've got, and we're grizzled old veterans. Not that we weren't, even when we started, we had been at this a while, but basically the industry has changed. We have changed. And I think our target audience has changed. And
Phil, to put that in perspective, I think when we started, I was 40. So not a kid, right? But now I'm 55. And to some of our listeners are like, dude, you are frickin' old. It's like, so this year I qualified. I could actually live in some of these senior apartments. I'm like, oh my God. And no wonder my joints are shot after all those years. But it does bring a different perspective, right? So yeah, you're going to be talking about, youth football, or I'll be talking about, I don't know, preserving muscle mass as you age, or I've been interested in sort of this big trend in space health. And you might say, what's it do with the space thing, Lonnie? It's like, well, I drove down to Houston last spring. I did this for a reason. I mean, there was a SpaceX launch this morning for anybody who saw it or didn't see it. Moving into space is going to be a huge commercial industry, including for the fitness industry, right? Because once people start going up there, it's the opposite of powerlifting. It's the lack of stimulus. It's microgravity, and their muscles waste away, their bones waste away. So, who's going to be good at preserving that? How about people like us, right? Yeah. It's going to be the people who understand lifting and nutrition and all that. But anyway, so you're going to see more diversified interest in that kind of stuff instead of me talking about, I remember back in the day talking about having to wear a sock on my package because I was backstage and everybody was expecting to be painted up and with the fake tan and everything, and I'm just like, this is the most bizarre thing I've ever done, and everybody's just standing around like that's just not a big deal, and it was one of the most bizarre things. Anyway, so those kinds of behind the scenes get huge now, compete now, especially with you, Phil, and there's no doubt you competed more than almost anybody I've ever known, and it's just, that's not going to be the future of what we're looking for. If you want big guns in the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about muscle health. We're going to talk about news and, mindset and stuff like that. If you like that kind of stuff, cool. But it's not going to be, here, bro, here's the latest way to put on, 2 inches on your arms in some unrealistic amount of time. But we're not.
Yeah, 100%. And that's not saying we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I am still coaching athletes. I have 2 people competing in the IPL Worlds this weekend. It's just our own personal focus is broader and in a different direction. Am I going to compete? I don't know. I've thought about it, but then 2 weeks ago, I went in and nobody on the show knows this. I weighed in at 229 yesterday.
Oh, wow.
I am like 60 pounds lighter than when I competed last.
Holy God. You're only 19 pounds heavier than me right now.
Yeah, exactly. But I went in and I was like, let's squat. And I went in and squatted 630 easy. I'm like, man, maybe I should actually train for a meet. And I've never lifted at 220. Like, my first ever powerlifting competition was 242. Right. And I was like, fuck, if I actually trained for this, I could probably squat 7 at 220 at 47 years old.
Right.
And so I'm not saying I'm done, but my days of competing 7 times a year are done. Well,
Phil, I would hope that, and I think there are, you were talking about this before we were recording, that there is a group of people who grew up through the T-Mag, muscle media kinds of days. Now they're in their 40s and 50s. Yes. And if they want to glean something like you wrestling with this idea, I'm still pretty freaking strong. Should I compete? Or I'm talking about my joints and like, man, my joints are shot. I mean, they're shot.
Yeah.
And so maybe people might be thinking, listen to Lonnie, I better be careful and do some proactive like self-care stuff because he never did. And yet at the same time, I'm a lifer. I'm still going to lift. I'm still very interested in new nutrition stuff coming down the pike. And so I would think that there is a population of listeners out there who could glean something from what we're talking about, even though I'm not literally like 4% body fat right now at 200 pounds or whatever. And you're not 300 pounds, just a shy of 300 pounds force feeding and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. And it even comes down to our own mindset. Like 15 years ago when we started this, my mindset as far as training went was what your mindset needs to be, like we talked about earlier, to be the best I could be at this sport. It was, I'm going to do whatever it fucking takes.
Yep.
I don't care about tomorrow. And I'll still 100% say that if you want to be an Olympian, if you want to be an NFL player, if you want to be Ed Cohn, you have to have some of that in you. To be the best. It's just the way it has to be. And now, at 40, going on 47, my mindset is, damn, I want to walk. I have to reach that stage. Hey, I don't see many 55-year-olds walking around at 290.
No, right.
I want to live and see my kids grow up. So maybe I should cut some weight off. My blood pressure, it was, we talked about it at that Record Breakers meet I did. And I came back and got blood work done, and for the first time ever, it was like, oh, I'm not in a good spot.
It didn't used to do that.
And it didn't do that. I had never had high blood pressure and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe I need to start thinking about some things. And so there's going to be some of the old and a lot more stuff for people that are, grizzled veterans that have been doing this for 15, 20 years.
Right.
So,
my hope would be that just tuning in for the chat, the talk, about what's going on. I listen to quite a few podcasts, and I feel like I know the hosts. Yes. And we definitely have some people, listeners, long-time listeners that have been around for almost since the beginning or since the beginning. That's a long freaking time, right? So, I do like the idea. You and I always used to say every week, right? The show must go on. That was kind of, don't pod fade. That's all the flakes do that. And even now they do that. But the problem now is with podcasting is we're going to have a much more limited listenership unless we can reach those middle-aged guys who they want to touch it. Hey, these guys have done some aggressive stuff, but they've been through their warrior phase. My wife used to say, Lonnie, you kind of have this kind of warrior, you're overdoing it, because I would get obsessive and because, it's abusive. It's abusive, and if you don't think you're going to battle, you're going to lose. You have to be ready to dominate, and there is that aggression, and but that doesn't mean you can't carry that into a new stage, a new journey, whatever, and get something out of that, listening to the talk and the news and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and that also boils down to even guests. Like we haven't had many guests on. Part of that is the reason. Part of the reason for that for me is not. I still talk to the same people. I still weekly talk to Dave Tate, Jim Windler, Brian Carroll, blah, blah, blah. But we've had them all on, so it's like, man, should I have them on again? But I probably should,
Just to
and
check
they're
in.
all they're all where we are.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I've had other people like, why don't you have this guy on? My problem with, and why I usually don't, is because those people are the people we just talked about earlier in the show. And I am not tying my name to somebody that I don't believe in. If there's some young kid coming up that I see is doing great things and is like-minded with our values, I'll have them on.
Sure.
But if you're a flash in the pan promoting 30-day abs and other bullshit, I'm sorry. I'm not giving you a voice. I am not doing what everybody else is doing.
Phil, I still get...
down to... That's even with us. Like, how many times have we been offered sponsorships by companies?
Right.
That we won't, and I won't do it. I'm not selling my soul on this show.
In a related way, I still get emails from people who, a lot of these influencers, they hire a media person. And I mean, you and I would never have done that. I don't know. It sounds kind of arrogant and self-absorbed. I don't know, but I get outreach from these people, and like, I work on behalf of so and so, and he could tell an amazing story on your show, and he has a new book and a new product, and I'm like, see, no, I just delete that stuff. I expect. When I look at stuff, I expect some quality, and that's why we don't do that kind of stuff. Could we have a new guest every week? Yep. It's too much work for something that, like you said, doesn't even share our values. So I'm like, why would I have him on the show? And sometimes, rarely, I'll respond. Usually I just delete that stuff. And then they'll circle back 2-3 times with a follow-up, and I'm like, if that's what it takes to have a huge listenership, I'm just not going to do that. We'll have our own little corner of the internet and do our thing.
And how can we what it boils down to me too, how can we justify having Joe 30-minute abs on a show that Bill Pearl's been on numerous times?
Oh, right.
Like, we were giving them the same level of attention. And I'm sorry, disrespect. I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't do it. That'd be like Saturday Night Live having your local open mic comedian on. They don't do that.
Right.
And hey, maybe that's being a little arrogant, but it's our own choice on the show.
Right.
Like, I'm not giving you a voice.
Yeah.
You got to earn your voice.
Having said that, though, it's a good point, Phil, about just checking in with some of these guys. Like, what's going on with you now? And you know what? If Dave Tate isn't in the middle of peaking for something for a competition cycle, so what? It's Dave Tate.
And it's still great news. And, my best conversations are still, like at the Swiss, I got to sit down for like 4 hours and just talk with Ed. And it was amazing. And a lot of it's just bullshit. It's not even about lifting. But then we talk about lifting too. And guess what he talks about all the time now? We spend a majority of our time talking about joints and injuries. Yeah. Because that's where we're at. As I'll share this with you. I'll share that with you. And before, 15 years ago, it was sharing how to get stronger with each other.
Right, the next contest. Yeah.
And here's what I'm doing. You need to use the safety squat bar this way and blah, 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 blah. And now it's like, you're old too. Let's take curcumin together and do this.
And fight the long fight. Yeah.
So.
And I do think that it is a good idea. We should reach out. We have a couple of people actually lined up that listeners don't know about. And it's just going to be people that either we respect or they have a good message and that kind of stuff. The other thing to think about too is, and we said this even when we started, this is not our primary job. This is not our source of income. This is something that we do on weekends to check in and stuff, and everybody's welcome to join in. And we're on YouTube, of course. You can go. There's the IronRadio network. You can look up on YouTube and look at a back catalog of stuff. And Mike Nelson, everybody, he's interested in sort of trying to work with our old feed, because I've been working with trying to reroute as much as I can and keep the news out there, and then the old feed wasn't getting updated enough. I think that'll change if Mike can get some of his people on it. I know he's got some expertise, let's just say, in the whole newsletters and social media stuff, because it's very different than it used to be, where I would sit down and hand write our RSS feed. I actually learned some minor coding skills, HTML and RSS feeds, so we could do it at all. And that's not how we do it anymore. That's not how it's done. But so if Mike can reboot that, hopefully Apple iTunes won't shit on us for saying, "Oh, you're pumping this out through 2 feeds." Yeah. It's kind of the same content. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. But we do need to get that out. The newsletter that I've been doing, I don't even know if I'm going to continue doing that, because that's $55 a month. Yeah. And it's not like the newsletter just automatically grows every month. And again, it's one thing to say this isn't our prime source of income. It's another one to say I'm putting $15 into a website and 55 into a newsletter and 15 more here and 100 there in ads. And because today's podcast and YouTube market is very much, it looks like a pay to play. Yep. Where, Facebook is like, you can boost that ad, that post for $45, only $45. I'm like, I am not going to do that. Nope. So people stumble on us, or some of the old guard. I don't know. Write in. You can reach out to me.
I don't mind that. That's much like how I ran my gym. Man, we were a hidden gem, and you had to know to know.
Yep.
And,
I
don't mind being that as far as a podcast. And because we've never done this to make a dollar. We've always done it, like we said from the start, more of a public radio format. And just to pass out information and knowledge. And hopefully people like it and tune in. And
we do have a handful, everybody. We do have a handful of people. You can, if you go to our iTunes podcasts, just look for Iron Radio. You can find links to donate and that kind of stuff. And we do have a couple of donors still. Once we've revamped, I've been very careful not to just reignite all of the old donors, because I'm not going to start, how gyms are.
Yeah.
Like gyms will auto debit you quietly until you complain.
Yes.
I am not going to do that.
Yeah.
But we have a handful of old guard, and you know who you are.
And hey, spread the word. If you've been listening for 15 years, do us a favor. If you think you know somebody that wants to hear this, and tell them. That's how we grow, because we're not going to pay to advertise.
That's right.
And things like that.
Honestly, Phil, over the past year, I have put a couple $100 into things, and I started just realizing, in today's landscape, it's going to take more. Yeah, and I'm just not. There's too much noise. People a lot of podcasters, like some of what we do is through Libsyn and these middlemen that you almost have to use these days. And they say there's lots of competition in podcasting. I would argue that's not competition, because that suggests quality and threat.
Yep.
I wouldn't call it competition. I would call it noise. There's a lot of noise, and people willing to spend a whole lot of money. I mean, why does that Facebook advertising model work? Because people are so self-absorbed that they need validation and popularity. They'll spend $45 to boost that post.
Yep, to get another like.
Yeah. That's not what you're going to get here.
And that goes right back down to what I said before. Like the elites out there, and sounds kind of egotistical. Like Ed Cohn, he wasn't out screaming that he's the GOAT. Somebody else called it the GOAT. And if we just start advertising and telling everybody we're the best podcast in the world, this and that, it's disingenuous. It's not. Yeah.
Well, and you should expect, I would think, anybody who would tune in and be like, "Oh my God, I heard you guys, I haven't heard you for years. I just heard you on the show recently." If you expect Phil and I to be exactly who we were 15 years ago, or Mike, or I know Jarrell's a little bit more recent addition, but you're not going to get that same kind. It's not the same show. I mean, we almost we're now carrying the weight of 15 years. I don't want to say we collapsed under our own weight, but in some ways that's kind of true. But if people like the comfort of tuning in on a weekend and be like, "Oh, there they are again," that's what I would like to try to provide. I think there's value in that. Like some of the TV shows still on the air after umpteen seasons.
Well, and let's be real. It's not just us that has changed. It's the competitions themselves have changed. In the atmosphere. Like I've talked about this recently with plenty of people. Like powerlifting is totally different than it was 15 years ago. When I'd go to meets 15 years ago, there were things going on at meets that aren't now. I mean, like I tell people, you used to go to a powerlifting meet and you were a little scared. And not because of the lifting, but who was going to be there? You know?
Yeah.
There'd be people sniffing lines of Coke off a chalk bowl before they lift.
Oh my God.
It's different. It's a different era. And that's not saying it's good or bad, but it's all changed. Like 15 years is a long time. And what we're talking about, and I was in a meet every other weekend. If I wasn't competing, I was there. And I was seeing these things and we're reporting back to them. I'm on a football field 3 times a week.
Right. No, I get it. Is it more sanitized? Is that what you're suggesting? Like the sport is now more politically correct?
For sure. Way more politically correct and less what would you call it? It's less black sheep and more trendy.
Okay.
Like there's more like you never heard about people taking. There weren't people that changed singlets 3 times a meet and had video people there for them.
Right. No, right. That's a good way to put
it. That's how it's changed. Like people were there to do it,
right.
Not to show it. And
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, do it, don't show it. Yeah.
Like, that's why they were there. They didn't, it's what it was. And that's not saying good or bad. And I think you're going to see a pushback towards that, because powerlifting really in the last 8 years went way up, but I'm already seeing it lose popularity. And oddly enough, I'm seeing bodybuilding and figure stuff go way up again. And like anything else, it goes up and down. But, and it's whatever social media grabs onto. And for a while, there's strength sports, and it was the advent of CrossFit.
Right.
That became very popular. It was, for a while there, it became not what you look like, but what you can do. Whereas when we started this show, we were towards the end of the all show, no go era.
Right.
You
right.
know? So, it's not just us that changes the strength
It's
sports
true.
world.
Well, people probably like, Lonnie doesn't even talk about bodybuilding contests anymore. I lost track, everybody. I can't, talk about a sport that collapsed under its own weight.
Yeah.
There was all these attempts. Well, how about if we just do like a 212 class or a classic class or a men's fitness with the board shorts or whatever? And to me, it's the purity of the sport. It just becomes so diverse. I can't even keep track anymore. It used to be the weight classes were heavy, light, heavy, medium, light. I mean, it was bodybuilding. There was men's and women's bodybuilding, and a lot of that stuff has just changed so dramatically. And I'm sure people are still interested in physique competitions, and there's 100 different natural leagues and all this kind of stuff. And back in the day, it was sort of just the NPC. That's just what you did. Maybe NABA. Yeah. So that sport has changed so dramatically as well that it's hard to keep track. Back in the day, just like you were saying, like Ed Cohn would never be caught boasting on himself. Same thing, like you would see Tom Platz on a talk show or something, and the average public did not understand anabolic steroid use. They didn't understand the sport. And so these guys were they were wow factor. They were just a little bit of freaky drama. Bodybuilding and powerlifting were very niche sports. It's not like, we've talked about that before. Hell no, they're not big three. They were always weird niche sports. Now I feel like they've gone more mainstream, but sometimes in a bad way, where you get people who just want to go clubbing and they have trend cough.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of that has changed a lot, and it's and maybe that's the internet. The internet's changing a lot of stuff, and it's not the same landscape even online that it was 10 or 15 years ago. So hopefully we can move in a direction where if you want some, sensible talk about stuff or advice, send us a question. My email is lawnman7@hotmail.com. I had the old Microsoft Hotmail account forever. People can do that, or you can do it through a website or what have you. So.
Yeah, and I've had hundreds of people reach out to me. I had one of our old listeners this week reach out on Messenger on Facebook. Like, I'm there. You can. Oh,
that's even
catch
better.
Me there.
That's better, probably. Yeah, so, Facebook, because I don't even do that.
Yeah,
I
do, and a lot of it's my main reason. Like, I don't scroll it. I have Messenger because I use it to keep in touch with people.
Communication.
So that's what it is. So.
All right, well, everybody, there it is. That's going to be the future of the show. I mean, you could come along for the journey if you're also, looking for this sort of mature perspective, I guess, and someone who can call back and look at things that they've seen before and how things are different. But it's not going to be RIPT abs ABZ, in 4 weeks, because that doesn't happen. And we don't really care about it as much anymore.
And it never really was about that, is the thing. So the change isn't that big. It's just what we're involved in is a little different. So the basis of the show is the same. We were never about quick fixes and 30-minute abs. So
there's just more surgeries sprinkled in. Which, by the way, I have one next week. Oh God, they're going to rebuild my ankle. But you know what? I was able to, last time I had that repaired, I used that for 20 years in the gym, squatting heavy for me and doing all the things. I really used it. But yeah, there's lessons to be learned there. Like Dan John would say, just get the replacement part and get back in the race. And, there's lessons there, I guess. All right. Well, I guess we're done.
Okay. Thanks for listening, guys.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the IronRadio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community.
The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on IronRadio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.